Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Dave here with Go Gamers, and today we're going to be taking a look at this PS4 fat model console that has a video problem. So let's go over to the upper cam and see what's going on. So we have a regular standard PS4 model with the gloss black hard drive cover that is having a video issue. The first thing that we're going to do is go under the microscope and see if you can see any physical damages to the HDMI port, because that is going to be the most common issue. I repair this issue at least 10 times a day. So we're going to check that first. So as you can see, we have the back ports underneath the microscope, and those back pins actually look good. So let's see if we can get closer. Oh, I see a pin sticking out from the other side. So this side looks good. I see one pin sticking out from the other side. So here's the other side of our HDMI port. Now, if you look deep down there, you can see that first pin on the left hand side is completely bent over. Let's break this thing all the way down to the motherboard and let's see what we could get done with this console. So we have this PS4 console all the way down to the motherboard, and what we're going to do is we're going to look over this HDMI port and see about getting this replaced. Now first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to blow it off. It was a ton of dust, so I had to find my face mask because this was crazy. But I'm going to air dust this off, clean this off, and then we're going to take a deeper dive into this HDMI port. All right, so I got it dusted off. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some Kapton tape, if I could get this off correctly, and we're going to put it all four ways around the HDMI port to make sure we can fully protect our components around the HDMI port. So let me stop struggling with this Kapton tape, get it around the board, and I will show you guys how it looks with the Kapton tape around it so we can protect that motherboard. All right, so we have the Kapton tape all four ways. I have it covering up and protecting your HDMI IC chip, which sits crazy enough right underneath your HDMI port, which is kind of unusual, but these HDMIs kind of work a little bit different. As you can see, we have all this protected. Now we're going to go under our microscope and check it all out and see. So we have our HDMI port. Now this is how HDMI ports work on these PS4s. These HDMI ports, here are your pins, and as you can see my jacked up tweezers that I'm actually getting a new pair today, and here's your pin that's sticking out that's broken. Now, a lot of times people will go in and they'll just stick that pin in, and then they'll go to the other side and they'll just fix that pin. I see a lot of local repair shops do that because I could come in, when they come in and they drop off these consoles, I could tell without the customer even letting us know, like, hey, I dropped it off to another repair shop, because 9 times out of 10, that copper on the motherboard would be lifted off. Then unfortunately the customer have to pay more money to get that copper relined back up to this veer right here. But the signals go through these veers and it comes back on to the other side to underneath this heat reflector. Underneath this heat reflector sits your encoder. But we're focusing on this HDMI port today. I'm going to grab my clamp because you want to make sure you clamp down this motherboard onto your desk so it doesn't move. I'm going to take that, and I got it clamped down. As you can see, it's not going anywhere. And what I do is I take a heat gun. All right, so we're back under the microscope. I'm going to take my heat gun, turn it on to the second to highest level, turn the fan speed all the way up on max, and we're just going to heat from underneath this HDMI port. That's how you want to heat it up, from underneath it. You want to allow this port to get off there. Kind of see the solder starting to get tender and weak, so we can lift this port off. All right. Don't want to lift it off too early because you will destroy those pads. I've seen people lift the entire header taking this stuff off. So we got the HDMI port off. Let me back up that fume extractor so you guys can get a better view. As you can tell, we got it off. Here is the old port. Now what we're going to do is before we even take on a new port, I'm going to allow my solder iron to heat up, and we're going to rework this entire header, including the 4 legs, to make sure when we put on this new port, we can solder down every single pin and we have fresh solder to flow onto. So I'll be back to you when my solder iron is heated up and ready to go. All right, so solder iron is heated up. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some 8341 no clean flux that you can get off Amazon. I'm going to put it on all 4 legs, if I can squeeze it out of there. Then we're going to put it across the entire header. Had to take off that tip just to get this to apply a little bit quicker. I don't know what it is, those tips is always so hard to get this flux through on this 8341 no clean flux. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my roll of solder that you can get off Amazon. I used the 44-inch rosin core, and we're going to get to work. All right, seems to be heated up enough. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with all 4 of my pads. Get fresh solder on there to make sure when we get our new HDMI port on there, it actually can stay on there without falling off. I got the entire HDMI header reworked with brand new solder. Got all 4 legs reworked with brand new solder. It took a little longer than usual just because I actually need to swap out the tip of my solder iron. And I am still waiting on my tips for my hackle as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do everything I did to take off this port in reverse. I'm going to heat up my heat gun, and I'm going to put it at the same exact setting, put it in the same exact position right underneath the board, and we're going to let it heat up that solder. And once that solder heats up, what we're going to do is we're just going to simply place this HDMI port on these legs in this header. And after that comes the most complicated part, and that's resoldering down all the pins onto the header. So allow this to fully melt. Don't want to rush to put this on there. As you can see, all those legs are flowing into place. The header is flowing into place as well. All right, so we have our HDMI port placed on there. Then what you want to do is you just want to use your eyes, look around it just to make sure that the port is on there correctly. So as I can see, it's up front, it's level, Make sure there's 2 black pads that sit right above the HDMI port. Just make sure that's level with the board. Make sure it's not sticking up at an angle or anything like that, because you will have to redo it. So as you can see on our microscope, everything is on there perfect, and now it's time to solder all the pins down to the actual board. So this is going to be a fun one. Now I'm going to put a little bit more flux on there, and we're just going to start reworking this. All right, so I'll put some flux down. Now I'm going to take my solder iron with absolutely no solder on it, because there shouldn't be any need to tend your solder head on this, because really all we're doing is we're just going to be soldering down these pins onto the header. So as you can see, what I do is I place my solder iron right in front of the pin, then I roll it over the pin to make sure all the solder is flowed, to make sure every single pin is on the copper. So the process super simple. Let me get a better angle with my hand. And I don't use really any pressure at all. If you use a ton of pressure, you will break these pads. So don't use too much pressure. You have to really be careful around this too, because it's all that plastic and crap around it that makes it a little bit more difficult to work around it, because if you accidentally nick it, just like what I did just here, some of this black stuff gets in there, so it kind of gets harder to see, but it looks good. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn off my fume extractor, take a toothbrush, dip it in some 91% IPA, and I'm gonna clean up this header just a tad bit, so I can be able to go through with my tweezers and test every single pin to make sure every single pin is soldered down correctly. So I'm just putting a little tiny bit of pressure, not a lot, because you will break this if you do. Every pin is on there great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove all of this Kapton tape, clean the board down, put my air compressor to it, make sure everything is off there, and we're going to put this thing back together and see if we got a working HDMI port. All right, so got the PS4 all the way back together. Blue light is on. Just turned it on. Black screen. We got the PS logo. Let's see what happens. I'm going to grab my PS4 controller and see what we could get. Hopefully everything else is good. I always do a port wiggle test. I'll slightly wiggle the HDMI port just to make sure there's nothing going on. And we have the main screen. Let's make sure we have sound. Let's make sure everything is working. Oh, okay. So we got sound, and that's very good. So let's try to slide back and forth. Make sure all the graphics is fine. Perfect. So we have a perfect working PS4 game console with the HDMI port. So that's pretty much going to be it for today. If this video did help you guys out, please go ahead and leave a like. Also, if you have any questions on what I did, or if you want to see me repair something that you haven't seen repaired yet, please go ahead and leave it down in the comment below. Also, if you guys can, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you do want to see more daily content like this. But besides that, you guys have a good day, and I'll see you guys on the next one.